Ladies and gentlemen, we are back to the LCUS, a league for the rest of us. It's been a long time. We've been waiting on this since 2020 seemed like a distant memory, or a distant horizon, that is to say, and now 2020 has been uh, a ridiculous thing. But thankfully, we have a new split of the LCUS ready to rescue us from all of this ridiculousness. I am Jeff. I am joined here by my co-host Jareth, and tonight we are joined by two guests for this opening episode of Let's Talk About the League with Andy and Wally. How y'all doing tonight?
We're
Doing
doing
well?
pretty good.
Good, good. So, with the cusp of the new split on the horizon, there's obviously a lot to talk about. We are in essentially what I consider, at least personally, the prime time of the League of Legends calendar. We're going into Worlds, and it just so happens that we're also going into the new LCUS split at the same time. So what a beautiful level of synergy between Riot Games and the LCUS. Starting off, I believe the first topic that we really want to broach is the power rankings that we've all talked about. I believe most people were asked to submit their own personal rankings of the teams once rosters finally came out. Shout out to Discord for whining and complaining about that for so long. They finally came out. It was hype. It was exciting. It was interesting, and we all got to express our opinions. So for me, I guess I'll just start off with me because you know there's no I in team. For me, I had Phoenix coming up first, and it looks like Andy, you did as well. Do we want to start with that, Andy? What made you feel? Oh, and Wally as well. Actually, both of you had Phoenix as number one. So we'll start with Andy. We'll go alphabetically. What made you feel that Phoenix was worthy of the top spot in your rankings?
Yeah, my number one reason I think for putting it at the top was solo laners. I think right now the meta is kind of owned by solo laners, both mid and top, as well as jungle. I think is really strong right now too. I think just that team just has I think two of the better solo laners in the league, so I think it just makes sense. And they have a lot of carry potential from those two individuals. So I think just a natural choice based on what I think the meta is going to favor and just the people in those roles.
Sounds good. Wally, you have anything to add?
Yeah, so in addition to the solo laners, I'm not going to go over that again. I mean, they have two very quality solo laners. I played with both of them in scrims. Their jungler is also very impressive as well. I believe he played Hecarim when we played together and just absolutely took over the map. So they probably have the best complete top side in the league. I'm not sure about their bot lane, but as you said, it's solo lane focused meta right now.
All right, so Jareth, you were the only one of the three of us actually who did not put Phoenix number one. Do you want to? You actually had them all the way down at number five.
Oh
What?
yeah. Oh yeah. So
What's the rationale there?
okay, so before I answer that, I'm gonna give Wally a pass here. All right, I forgive you for being wrong. That's fine. You're gonna understand very quickly why you're wrong. Andy though, I don't know. I don't have any excuses for you. But this is the LCUS. You can do whatever you want solo lane. You can dominate solo lane. And honestly, you're probably going to win some games for your team by doing some crazy good solo carry. And even if that's the meta, once again, this is the LCUS. This is all about teams. Typically, the ones who make it to the end are those super good oriented teams that work well together, not necessarily the ones who have the best player in a spot. We've seen that time and time again. So, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the season that I get proven wrong and those solo lanes do all the work, but I just from past experience, those that play for objectives, play around a team comp, and do that well. Those are the ones that make it.
I do agree with that to an extent. For me, myself, as I guess I've already spoiled, I also put Phoenix as number one. For me, I just think it as an echo to what others have said. It is a solo lane meta, but I will acquiesce to what Jareth said, which is that the LCUS, no offense to everybody playing here, everybody analyzing, casting, whatever you're doing here, in the end, like we're not professional level meta. So if a bot lane is just insanely good, that's fine. You can still carry through that way. So we don't have to be slaves to the meta in the LCOS, which kind of makes it better. But I do think that Phoenix, when you look at Brandana and Great Beard of Odin, their solo lanes are just very, very powerful. And I agree with what Wally said, is that Alonzi Tardis is just the kind of jungler who can unlock both of those guys. Does anyone else have any other thoughts on the number 1 ranking before we move on?
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
Cool. I just don't want to cut anybody off. All right. So another thing that seemed to be in big disparity when it comes to the rankings is option 12. It seems like a lot of people were in different directions when it comes to option 12. If y'all don't mind, I will actually kick off this discussion, because I will fully admit that when I first made my rankings, I think that based on now, looking at specifically certain players' op.gg pages in the last week, I would change my ranking. So I had option 12 at 5. I would put them up more maybe towards 3 at this point, but most of you guys had them even higher than me. So why don't we'll go in reverse order. Jareth, you had them number 1. What was your thoughts behind that?
So, honestly, these were kind of hard rankings for me, just because I truly do think most of the teams are pretty balanced. So the reason I put option 12 higher, though, is it kind of ties into what I just said, though. I think this is a team that already out the gate is going to work well together. I think this is a team that already, without giving away too many spoilers, they're already putting in work. They're doing that scouting. They're coming up with team comps. Like, they're already working really well together as a team, and I think they're going to show that over the weekend when they play. So because of that, I think they've got very, 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 very strong chance to be number 1.
All right. So it looks like, Andy, you had option 12 at 3. What do you see in that team? What made you put them there?
Yeah, I think they were just hovering somewhere on the between like 2 and 4. I'd say I was kind of going back and forth in that ballpark. To me, I think they have really good mid jungle synergy potential. Greg is a pretty good mid laner with a lot of the champs that he pulls out. I think Prowler is definitely one of the top junglers who can definitely pull his own weight in a lot of games. So I think that could be a really good duo for them. And I know I played with at least I think 4 of the people on that team. So just playing with them over the course of many months and years, even some, definitely I could see that potential in that team to kind of be towards get close to the top of the standings here.
And Wally, you had them 4th, which is actually still, I mean, based on my original voting, higher than I had them. Is there something about option 12 that makes you doubt them, or do you think that, like these other guys, they have potential that maybe just needs to be unlocked?
So my biggest concern with option 12 is that the only real carry material I see is in their jungle. Their mid laner is very good, but they have more of a supportive playstyle, and they may be able to augment Prowler. And I will say, I think that at least for the early game and mid game, the first 15-20 minutes, they will have one of the best mid jungle combos. But I don't see a carry coming out of the ADC or the top role, or even the mid role, just based off of champ pools. And I don't think you can really carry from the jungle in this meta, at least not easily. So that's why I had them not as high. I think they do have some very high quality players, but I don't think that they have that carry factor that you'll need.
Yeah, you touched a little bit on me when I first submitted my rankings. For me personally, I was hesitant also, as you were, Wally, to wonder who carries this team other than Prowler out of the jungle, who I've repeatedly said is one of the most influential players, and that's not even necessarily a compliment. It's just essentially as Prowler goes, his team goes. Because he plays Master Yi, he plays Karthus, he plays things like that, where if he is fed, his team wins. If he feeds, his team struggles. And so the question was, could Gregorsaurus adapt to a more supportive mid lane role? And I've seen him do lately a lot more like Morgana, Galio mid type things, and that's made me realize that, okay, maybe option 12 deserves to be a little higher. So that that's why I think that maybe I was wrong in my initial ranking.
Well, I think maybe sorry to interrupt, but I think
No,
there's
go
some
ahead, go ahead.
communication. I'm saying Gregosaurus does play a supportive mid style, and so they do play stuff like the Morgana, like the Galio, which does augment Prowler. But I think that carrying from the jungle is a very hard thing to do, especially in coordinated play, where ganks aren't going to come by as often. You're going to have to get by power farming.
Sure. Yeah, fair point. All right. So, as we move on here, we did want to talk a little about teams that it feels like, and we probably will skip over Wally and Andy here. No offense, but just since you guys are actually players, so this might just be me and Jareth. Who do you feel is a team that might be being underrated versus a team that is being possibly overrated?
I'll go ahead and start. I think I'm going to answer the overrated first. I think Blitzkrieg is a bit overrated. I think people are super scared just because, on paper, that team does look pretty stacked. But I think they have a lot of wild cards as far as what can happen. We've seen, not to throw shade or anything, that's not what I'm trying to do here, but we've seen J-Dog carry, but we've also seen him completely throw. Ace, I think, is the safe pick for that team, but he's kind of the only one. Shugo, I don't feel like we know enough about yet. And then as far as the jungle and support, they are what they are. So I think that people are really, really scared about that team, but they're very hit or miss. So that's why on mine they're still second because I'm betting that they do pull it together, but I kind of toggled between them being second on my list or fifth.
Sure.
And then for the other side of your question, someone that's sleeper, White Wolf Gaming. Like I think that overall they're kind of on the lower side of everyone's thoughts, and a lot of time that's the motivation you need to prove everyone wrong, and we've seen that a few times. So I'm kind of hoping that's the case here. I want them to prove not only myself but everyone else who's put them at sixth. Prove us all wrong.
Well, for people who might remember, White Wolf was actually sixth going into the last week of the regular season, way back in Split 5, ended up winning it all. So
Exactly.
obviously the players are different, but maybe there's some juju with the name. For me, I believe that Phoenix personally has the highest ceiling, just based on when you look at that lineup. You see a lot of LCUS veterans, a lot of really skilled players. It almost looks a little OP. And for floor, I'd say Blitzkrieg. I know that there are questions about them. You talked about Ace being such a consistent player. And I think that actually helps them when it comes to having the highest floor, to potentially not being overhyped. Because I just feel like a team with Ace and Sigtal Lord, who are both very, very good communicators, they're the kind of players who will not let their team be unprepared for a match. So I feel like that is a team that is going to come out with a plan every single match. So for me, I feel like Blitzkrieg, like their floor is very high. I don't know how high their ceiling is, but I think that they will at least be relatively successful.
I can agree with all that.
All right, so now we're going to get into the patch. So we got 10.19 coming up. A lot of. I mean, this is the world's patch for Riot, so they don't care about all of us mediocre, plat, diamond, gold, or whatever players. They're trying to balance the meta based on what they think Bjergsen and Knight and all of them are gonna do. But we do need to discuss this patch and how it might impact the LCUS. So, just since we just heard from you, Jareth, I'm going to start with Andy since he has a couple notes here. Andy, what do you see as when it comes to 10.19? What are you looking at as being important things to look at?
So I'm not entirely sure when she technically comes out in the patch. I'm not really sure if it's going to be time for Sunday, or even a time for people to practice it. But I'm actually really interested to see how she fits in. Because I think she's one of those champions. I wouldn't say she's like a Yasuo kind of champ, but she seems like the kind of like champion that somebody's going to really start to like to play a lot. I think it could even be a solo lane pick for somebody potentially. I'd be lying if I said I'm not going to give it a try on top lane. Because because I think that's just a kind of champion that just feels like it might be really fun to play. And those are the kind of champions that people really grapple onto. And if somebody really gets a hold on how she works and how she can work with the team that they're on and stuff like that, I think that could be a champion to watch out for. Might even throw some bans towards her way at some point. So really interested to see that for sure.
Sounds good. And what about? I know that you, at least back in the day, you used to be an AD carry main. I know you've moved away from that, but everyone talks about Caitlyn in the current state of the game. What are your thoughts on that?
It's unfortunate. I actually really like playing Caitlyn, and I still do, even though I'm not really playing AD carry much anymore. She's just way too oppressive, and especially in, I'll call like middle to low ELO, which is most of us in this league. It's just too easy to just dominate lane with her, and people aren't as good about kind of like biding their time and kind of catching a farm at the tower and stuff like that. So she's one of those champions that is either going to be in the trash can or just going to be like the most OP ever. And right now she's just the most OP ever. So I continue to see that as in bans all across the games I've been playing, and I think she'll just continue that train. I think teams are going to be forced to ban or have a plan around it somehow, because that's just kind of the best champion in bot lane by far.
If I can interject, I kind of want to tack on with that as well, because I think another thing that's kind of, I guess, a problem with her is most ADCs are just not strong right now. Like, I don't think anyone disagrees with that. There are a few that can get very strong late still, when you get a couple items. But, like, for the most part, like, there's just not really a whole lot of ADCs that you're just like, oh, man, crap, this is going to be a hard lane. With the exception of her and Ashe before that. And they had the wisdom to nerf Ashe a little bit, but they didn't even touch her. They were just like, whatever. They'll just keep banning her. That kind of drives me mad a little bit, but...
Yeah, I think they threw some buffs at Twitch, I think, maybe a patch ago even.
Oh, Twitch.
So I think that'll be interesting. The problem with that is Caitlyn is ridiculous into Twitch, so that's a hard matchup even if Caitlyn's not strong. So I think Twitch could see some play, but we'll definitely have to have a plan around, I think. But there are some pocket picks you might see, but yeah, I agree, Caitlyn's just too strong right now, overall.
So, if I can comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before the Caitlyn buffs that caused her to be overpowered, she was still sitting at a 51% win rate. And so she was still like a decent pick. She's now nerfed to a state that was worse than that, so she's probably realistically going to be about 50.5%. I think she's going to still be a strong pick, but I don't think she's going to be the complete alpha and omega like she is every game. I think that she is that -2 AD is going to hurt, and on top of that, they're tacking on the attack speed loss. She's still going to be good, but not S+ tier. So I don't know if it's worth banning her every game.
Sounds like something a Caitlyn player would say.
But see, here's the issue is, so even if that's, that's fair points, but kind of what I was talking about, though, is like, who else is really that scary, though? Like, even with those drops, is she going to feel like every other ADC who kind of feels like garbage right now? Like...
Well, so...
Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
A lot of ADCs aren't able to see play just because Caitlyn has been so oppressive. I think that as Caitlyn falls out of the meta, you will see a lot of champs kind of rise out of the woodworks. I know, for instance, and this is just a solo queue pick, I can't play it, but I have a friend who's a Draven one trick, Diamond 2 Elo, absolutely hates Caitlyn, bans it every game. That's a champ that will be seeing more play, and I think is in a really good spot. My spicy pick is Vayne. I think Vayne is actually sleeper right now, but she can't see play because Caitlyn's in every game. And she also kind of loses to Senna and Ashe, but Senna just got nerfed as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Vayne seeing play as well.
I agree with the Vayne pick. I unfortunately agree with the Draven one. I just don't want it to happen because I can't stand him.
So Jared, we touched earlier on, someone mentioned Twitch earlier. Jared, you specifically brought up before this podcast, people should be looking into playing Twitch. What goes behind that for you personally?
So Twitch late game never really fell off. Like, it's not something that's weak in my opinion right now. It's pretty weak early, kind of. So I think that's why you didn't see it, and especially like just with how strong Caitlyn and Ashe were, like you just weren't going to see it. But they recently buffed him, so he went from someone that was already pretty decent late to someone who's good. And with some of these other ADCs stepping down, I do agree that like Vayne and unfortunately Draven are going to pop up. But I think Twitch is a really good one, especially for a community like ours who does a lot of the times try to pick those late game scaling champs. I mean, Twitch is definitely up there for you.
Sure. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. When I saw those Twitch changes, personally, as somebody who likes to play Twitch, the buffs were mouth-watering a little bit. And I know that I'm not going to say names because I don't want to give anybody away, but I know there's at least 1 or 2 junglers in our league who will play Twitch jungle too. So that'll be interesting. On when it comes to non-ADC, non-bot lane moments from the patch notes, what do y'all think about Akali? Some slight nerfs to her there. She's obviously a very, very, essentially skill-based champion. Like, you either play her really well or you play her really bad. What are you guys thinking about that?
So
Yeah.
here's the thing with Akali and Akali players. In professional play where everyone's kind of, at least super close to skill level, if Akali is bad, sure, you might let her through because even though she's still going to do pretty decent even when she's quote unquote bad, when you have a mixed group like ours, that kind of it skews a lot because even if she's feeling a little weak, if you're really good at her and you're one of those higher elo players, you're still going to dominate a game with her. So I think that if you're up against someone and you're like, okay, well their mid laner is an Akali main, but she kind of is only in an okay spot right now, you might still want to ban her.
Sure.
Yeah, I think she's one of those champions where it takes a lot of games to really get good on her. Like everyone could probably like play her, but to really know how to navigate team fights and stuff like that, which is really the place where a lot of kind of novice Akalis will get into. They just won't be. They may be able to get solo kills, but they won't be able to team fight. That's the thing that really separates like a good Akali from a bad Akali or like a mediocre Akali is somebody who can know how to work those team fights. So the good Akali players will play Akali. If you're okay on Akali, you probably just won't touch her. So
Yeah, I mean Akali after her release and the nerfs that gutted her sustain, made it so her R was point click. She's still a really disgusting champion, but she is very, very hard to play. Fun story time. Back in season 8, when Akali was first reworked, I actually had the pleasure to lane against TL Jensen on his Akali, and that gave me nightmares. So if you can play Akali, you won't be playing it against my team. But
All right, so moving down. I mean, obviously, there's many things to discuss in this patch, but I do want to move us along. So, are there any other particular subjects that any of you guys want to touch on? Don't be shy.
champion wise or anything.
I mean, anything to do with the patch. So,
the patch,
champion wise, whatever.
I think I'm actually interested to see Aurelia, because I think she's one of those really dynamic champions that I think is a little bit easier to play in terms of like a team fight kind of champion. She has a lot of the same kind of like style where people like with Akali, but I think she kind of lends herself to kind of more cohesive team fights and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to see her, especially because she can be flexed in multiple lanes. You can maybe see some bot laners, probably not now, but maybe someone will pull it out. She's one of those champions that can really be fun to watch, and she, with her buffs, recent buffs, actually a couple of rounds of buffs actually, might see her pop up here and there.
I would agree with the R buffs for Aurelia. That makes her even more scary. Wally or Jareth, either of you guys got any thoughts on that?
Go ahead.
No, I don't really have any, so go ahead.
So I was gonna say, one of Aurelia's main strengths is her flexibility, how she can go either solo lane. She has a lot of mobility, really pinches the champ pool if she's viable. I don't remember her exact number buffs, so let me look them up real quick. It's an R buff. I don't know if that'll be enough to completely push her over the edge. It's just late game R damage, looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Which will matter in late game team fights. Her laning won't really change, though. I don't think it's too big of a buff. They're probably being careful to make sure she doesn't dominate worlds.
Sure. All right, sounds good. Oh, go ahead.
While we're still on champions, real quick. if you've been following higher levels play, you would see the Lucian nerfs targeted to the triple flex.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anyone was planning on playing Lucian, but if you were, you can still play it. I don't think the nerfs do anything. It's only scaling AD on a lane bully.
Yeah, if you get ahead, could still, yeah, absolutely, can still keep control of the lane. All right, anybody else have anything they want to talk about for 10-19? All right, then let's get into the juicy stuff. Week 1, we all have our predictions for various matchups. Week 1, we got Blitzkrieg against Option 12. It looks like I am the only one going with Blitzkrieg in this matchup. So if y'all don't mind, I will just start out here. I had Blitzkrieg as my number 2 team in power rankings overall because when I look at their roster, I see Ace and I see Sigtal Lord, who I think are both really, really good communicators, who I think are very, very adept and aware of current meta, current power picks, things like that. And I think that that kind of team will just find success. They will always enter every single match with a plan, with a specific pick draft, with that kind of stuff. And for Option 12, I do think that they have good players, really good players. When you look up and down the roster, really good players. But I'm not sure if they'll be that well oiled already in Week 1. So I guess just to be fair, we'll go top to bottom here because you guys all picked Option 12. Jareth, why don't you go ahead and be the first one to tell me why I'm wrong?
Oh, definitely. I'm glad you said it and I didn't have to. The reason you're wrong is because first off, this was kind of a hard one for me to pick. There's a Sig on each team, so shout outs, guys. But that being said, I think J-Dog knows he's the better top laner. It's like that's obvious. I don't think anyone would question that. But I think because he knows that, they're going to be able to use that. Like Option 12 is going to be able to use that to their advantage. And as I said before, I kind of have some inside scoop as to how they've been playing, what they've been doing, and you made a comment that they're still finding their identity. I hate to be that one to break it to you, but they found it. They synergize real well. They do really well together. So I don't know. I just think that this is going to be a game that kind of proves that Blitzkrieg actually might need to work a little bit more and get that communication going. And O12 is the one that actually already has it put together.
All right, Andy, you want to follow up?
Yeah, kind of hit on it early on in our power ranking conversation, but I think mid jungle is going to be really important in this matchup, especially. And I think that at least in some, I think it at least slightly favors Option 12, maybe not a stomp or anything. But I think the other pieces, I think bot lane is going to be relatively even. I think those are trade pretty nicely. I think to the point of top lane, I think it could go either way. I think it's almost a coin flip, and that may end up turning up what that actual game state is, which top player gets ahead. But I think it just puts slightly in Option 12's favors because the mid jungler I think is a little bit stronger from that team.
All right, everybody's talking about mid jungle. Wally, you put that specifically in your reasons. Do you want to expand upon that?
Yeah. So just from looking and playing with him, I feel like Prowler has a more aggressive playstyle, and as I said before, I think that their mid, what's his name? I lost it. Gregosaurus, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I believe he can augment that really well. In this particular matchup, I think that they're just going to wipe the floor with Blitzkrieg's jungle. I don't buy into the Blitzkrieg hype. I'm not going to smack talk or anything, but I just don't think that they're as good as everyone says they are. And I think that a lot of their weaknesses will be exposed by Option 12 in this game, mainly mid and jungle. But that's my hot take without getting too much into smack talk.
I love it. I love it.
All right, so it looks like the coin so far has predicted a 2-0 for Blitzkrieg. I mean, obviously the coin is literally random, but based on these current discussions, I'm just gonna proclaim the coin as my best friend out of all of us here. So moving on, set 2 this week. We have 9 Lives versus Northern Storm. Andy, you were the only one to pick Northern Storm in this one, but I'm gonna pull a little reverse here and let everybody else profess their arguments, and then give you the final rebuttal. So let's change up the order a little bit. Wally, why don't you tell us why you think Nine Lives will win this matchup?
I'm on the team, so I had to pick it.
All right. Fair enough. All right. For me, this is a tricky one. I mean, I literally think of it as a coin flip game, and it's gonna tell us a lot about so many of the players because we have a lot of new players in this game. There are a lot of people that we haven't particularly seen play on stage so far. For me, I just think that Nine Lives, they look like they are the team with potentially greater synergy, greater champion pools. With the ability, I mean, I think it's going to be a close match regardless. I guess I could have actually bet a 1-1, but I didn't. But I just think this for me is the hardest matchup to pick of the week. But I think that Nine Lives, just when I look at that roster, I think of them as having a slight advantage. Jareth, it looks like you also picked Nine Lives.
Yeah, so I kind of want to point out that all of us are saying similar things. Like, man, this is a hard one to choose. This is a coin flip game, and I think that honestly, no pressure, Wally. I think it comes down to you, and the reason I think that is because it is so even. It's so even, and I think that if I put Nine Lives because I think that on paper you guys have the stronger team. But I'm going to be honest. I think if Northern Storm can keep you from really getting ahead in this game, I think they could actually win. And so yeah, I did put Nine Lives, but man, it is so close. This one is so close in my opinion.
All right. Do you know if Icy's watching the stream, by the way? Icy Flip, he's my support. Icy, if you don't int me in laning phase, we will win this game. I'm just telling you now. We have been grinding the duo queue together, and there's a remarkable. Whenever we don't int laning phase, we win. Whenever we int laning phase, we lose. So it all comes down to watch bot lane for the first 10 minutes to see how the game goes.
Yep.
All right, Andy, you were the one of us to pick Northern Storm. What was your rationale behind that?
So unfortunately, I don't have any like bombshells to drop of like why I picked them over Nine Lives because like you guys, I think this is definitely the closest.
Yeah,
definitely the closest of the matchups in my opinion. I think to me the only thing that pushed it over a little bit is, I think the Northern Storm team has. I'm sounding like a broken record. I think mid jungle. I think is going to favor Northern Storm a bit. And I think that's pretty much. I think that's probably pretty much been the case for all of League. That's like the number one synergy you need to really take over games. Again, I think that can go either way because I think there's strengths and weaknesses from both sides in different lanes. But I just it's pretty much a coin flip for me too. But I just thought Northern Storm might have a slight edge. Plus, they're above Nine Lives by power ranking, so just made sense.
All right. Well, the fabled coin did apparently rule that one 1-1. So we'll see if any of us are smarter than an inanimate object.
Probably not.
Team Phoenix versus White Wolf will wrap us up for this week one. Andy, you are obviously on White Wolf. You perhaps regrettably were the only person on our panel here who chose White Wolf. So I'll let you start. Give some inspirational words to your team. What makes you think that you guys will win this game?
I'm just going to quote a wise old sage from back in early League history. If you don't have faith, why are you here? So I think it's definitely going to be an uphill battle. I think Phoenix has a lot of good players on them, but I do really think that this team, and if we had a number of days of scrims between our team, or not scrims, but just playing with our team, and I think we have a lot of team synergy that could really come out and probably surprise some people. It's definitely an uphill battle with this matchup, and it could be a tough one. But I think we have some players that can really outperform what their stats may look like. So definitely looking forward for this weekend.
And Wally, it looks like this was your power ranking number 1 versus your power ranking number 6. I mean, that says a lot in itself, but do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, I just think that Phoenix's solo laners are too good, and I don't think the bot lane will be able to do enough to carry.
Jareth, anything else?
I mean, I also put Phoenix to win this, but as I said earlier at the very beginning of this, I want them to prove me wrong. I think they can. Honestly, I do think they can. I think this is a team that everyone is kind of already written off, and I don't know. Sometimes that can discourage you, but other times, like I said before, that is the fire you need, and I think this is the team that can use that. So, good luck, guys.
Yeah, for me, I also picked Phoenix personally. I just think that Phoenix, when you look at their roster up and down, just the skill, the talent there is just very, very big. I almost just wrote team gap in my notes. I think that would have been toxic, but now that I just said it, it was probably toxic anyways. But yeah, I just think White Wolf. I mean, obviously, any match, especially at the LCUS level, where it's not, it's so much more about team coordination and chemistry and things, can go either way. So I hope that White Wolf comes into this match with a good draft, a good plan, because you never know what can happen. But for me, just looking on paper, Phoenix just looks just really good in general,
So
not just
I,
against White Wolf, but in general.
I do want to point something else out though, and that's the fact that we have seen before teams that, it's like, man, look at all these solo mindset, carry kind of
Hmm.
players on a team. And then what happens? They don't synergize super well. Or, one person wants to do this and another is sure that this is the right way to get a win. And I think that Phoenix is definitely the team that, in my opinion, they could fall into that. I'm not saying they will, but they definitely could fall into that. Too many of you are the solo carry mindset kind of people. And I think if White Wolf can exploit that, I think they could pull a win here.
I absolutely agree that that is definitely a possibility. All right, so moving on now, we've got some questions that some folks submitted for our podcast here this week. Starting off, it looks like this one was, this one definitely applies to just Wally as a new player. What are you thinking about being, a new player in the league coming up to this split?
So are you talking about in terms of gameplay or just all around?
Just whatever comes to mind, man. Like, when it comes to gameplay, if you want, but also mentality-wise, whatever you feel like talking about. I'm just interested to hear
So
your
before I
perspective.
talk about the gameplay, I promise Ace didn't pay me to say this, but I am very impressed with the quality of the content. I've played competitive League for 5 years, whether that's in leagues like this or in CLOL for Riot, and at least I guess until the finalist for CLOL, there's never been content this good. So I do applaud you guys for that. In terms of the gameplay, I feel that the way this is going to turn out, or the way it's turned out in my experience, is that a lot of the times the first 3 or 4 weeks, the better players will win. But as you go towards the later half of the split and towards playoffs, the better team will win, just
Mm.
because they do have that time to develop,
Yeah,
and they have time to kind of learn their strengths and weaknesses, and see who can carry and who has to support. Because that's always the issue with teams like this, is that some players have to carry and some players have to support, and it's all about finding your role on that team.
like that. Yeah, makes sense. All right, so for our two players who were kind enough to join us tonight, Andy and Wally, I'm gonna start with you, Andy. When you look at the teams up and down, which team do you think, like, when you look at them, you're like, oh, that's tough? Like, which one do you think gives you and White Wolf trouble?
It's going to sound a little contradictory based on the matchup I just talked about with us versus Phoenix. But I do think it's Phoenix. I think their solo laners, I think, are going to be the toughest challenge as a pair in the league. So I think it's going to be hard to win through those lanes against them. You may not get smashed, but win through the mid or top is going to be probably a little challenging. But again, I think we definitely have a shot. But I think that's definitely the team to look out for our team's kind of synergy and how we work usually.
Wally?
So for me, I put option 12 because I feel that I know I said that Phoenix has the best top half of the map, which I still think is true, but I think that option 12 has the best mid jungle. And the reason I put them above Phoenix is because I feel that Rolexis can hold down the top lane against Phoenix's top laner, so I'm not overly concerned about that lane. I'm more concerned about mid jungle, where that is able to make plays happen around the map. And I think they do have, just looking at OP.GG, is the best mid jungle duo in the league. And I feel like that will be a huge issue because, if they get a lead, what can I do in the bot lane when they're 4-man diving me at 10 minutes?
ADC life. I totally hear you, man.
All
All right. And so continuing on with you guys as the players who joined us tonight, is there a particular opponent that you are excited to lane against? We'll start with you this time, Wally.
Yo, first off, I want to say happy birthday, Heretic, because I put you as my answer. I know he's a support, but Heretic's a friend of mine, and I really want to play against him and the White Wolf Gaming bot lane, just so that I can
You,
smack talk him afterwards.
I was gonna say, do you have any trash talk words going in, or are you gonna save that for after?
No, I'm gonna let my gameplay speak for itself.
Sounds good. Andy, what about you?
Yeah, I'm actually really excited to play against Brandana this weekend. Not just because I think we're pretty evenly matched in that, and just in general in League. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Brandana usually plays top, and neither do I. So I think that's gonna be really exciting to see us kind of in off roles from what we usually play with, friends and stuff like that. So I think that'll be a really interesting matchup. Two people who are kind of out of place, but are definitely pretty evenly matched. So looking forward to that matchup for sure.
All right, sounds good. So now we're going to give the players a little bit of a break. Me and Jareth are just going to talk. For you, Jareth, is there a particular lane matchup this weekend that you are just hyped to see?
Oh yeah, man, it's game 2. It's Northern Storm 9 Lives. We already talked about it, that bot lane. Like I said, I think that's what determines the game. I think if Northern Storm jungle can influence that bot lane a little bit, I'm really excited. I know that to give some shout outs, I know both Sam and Kyle work really well together. Not saying anything about you, Wally. I know you're incredible. You're a really, really, really good ADC. But I think you've already counted yourself as being like almost unbeatable in this, as long as Icy Flip doesn't, throw. So I'm hoping people prove you wrong and they shine a little bit brighter than you expect them to.
Don't worry, if they do, I'll just say lane a support gap. That's all I gotta do. Is that how you go?
That's ADC main gospel right there. All right. So for me, personally, I was split between two here when it comes to the most hype matchup. But Andy already mentioned him versus Brandana top, and it's for all the same reasons. So I will forego that one for now. I think Ace versus Gregorsaurus, excuse me, is going to be a very interesting matchup because we're all talking about the synergy of mid jungle for option 12 with Gregorsaurus and Prowler. I mean, they are two very good players. But it almost feels like, and maybe this has something to do with just his longevity and consistency in the league, but it almost feels like we're disrespecting Ace at this point because I honestly have felt like he has been the overall best mid laner in the LCUS for a long, long time. Basically, anytime he's played it. So I'm excited to see how these two guys match up against each other, with one guy being sort of off role and the other guy being, in my opinion, the king of the mid lane throughout the LCUS. So moving on now, players we should be keeping our eyes on. Excuse me, for week 1. We'll just start from the top to the bottom here. Jareth, who do you have your eye on?
Shugo and J-Dog both. I personally don't know a whole lot about Shugo's ADC play, so I'm excited to see how he performs. And J-Dog there towards the end of our scrim game started really pulling it together and doing some really good plays. So I'm excited to see if he plays more like that or more like the first couple of scrims that we saw.
Sounds good. Wally, looks like you had a few answers for this one.
Yeah, I had 3. So the one the one I'm most interested in is, I would say, Prowler. As I've spoken about earlier, I feel like he's going to kind of dictate 12's success. If they can play around him properly, I think they'll be one of the best teams in the league. If they can't, I don't think they're going to be too hot. But I have confidence as him and a player that we've played together in scrims. I think he can do it, but he's just one to watch. Another one that I have is Great Beard of Odin. As a former mid main, I appreciate his gameplay, and I think that he's probably going to be one of the best mids in the league, and so I just want to keep an eye on that. As an honorary mention, I did put Rolexus just because I think he's going to be the only top laner in the league that knows that he has a teleport button. And so I think that's going to play a huge role in team games.
All right, sounds good. So, for me, I think that one player that we haven't really talked about much, and honestly, a team we haven't talked about that much so far tonight, I think WD Fan is going to be a very, very important player in this split. He's an 80 carry. Northern Storm, this is a team that not a lot of people ranked very high in their preseason rankings. WD Fan, I think he's a really, really good 80 carry player. The problem is that being an 80 carry player isn't very fun these days. So it comes to, can he play above the meta? Can he transcend the meta to actually carry his team? Because I do think that if Northern Storm succeeds, it will be on his back. So I'm excited to see that. Other than that, I think I alluded this slightly earlier, but Alonzi Tardis, he's got those two great solo lanes that we've talked about a lot in Brandana and Great Beard of Odin. As a jungler, you're tasked with sort of unlocking those players. Obviously, they can win lane on their own, but it's a big deal for you to be the jungler in that situation. So I'm excited to watch that. And Andy, I don't want you to put pressure on you, but I've played with you enough to know that you're a really good player. I've honestly never seen you lose lane in any position. So now that you're in top, I'm wondering, and also thankfully, or not thankfully, but due in part to Odin not being in top, I wouldn't be surprised if you show up as the best top laner in the league this split. So I'm excited to see you play top lane. And
No pressure at all.
That transitions right in to your particular picks for players we should be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I just have one. It's a repeat, but I think J-Dog is my player to watch. I think he kind of holds a lot of the power on that team if he performs at the highest level, at his highest possible level. I think it's like a watch out LCUS kind of situation. But it also can go the opposite way, and I think we've seen it in some of the scrims. Not the maybe the highest performances he's had. So I think that's one to watch out for, because I think that could really dictate a lot of how Blitzkrieg turns up this season.
All right, sounds good. Well, that was all the questions that I felt there was important to answer for week one. We've got a few more that y'all have submitted, but I think those can wait till a later date as we are running a bit on the long side here. So, Wally, Jareth, Andy, anybody else have anything they want to say? Trash talk you want to express before week one?
Yeah, I want to thank all three of you for coming on my new podcast. You're all wrong. I'm always right. I'm taking notes from Sigtal Lord, who used to have that whole shit. So thanks, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Relexus is best top of the league. Don't at me.
Oh,
That's my hot take.
I'll try to prove you wrong there.
Okay.
all right. Well, thank you guys very much, and thank you everybody else for listening to Let's Talk About the League, episode 1 of Split 6. Let's get excited. Sunday, we got the games going.
Have a good night.